Okay, welcome to today's lesson. Today's lesson is about advanced phrasal verbs. I've taken all of these phrasal verbs from a book by Cambridge University Press by Michael McCarthy and Felicity O'Dell. It's an excellent book, so please go and get it. I'm going to try and make some exercises for these phrasal verbs very soon as well, and I'll be selling that on my website, so you can look forward to that in the next few months. But if you're interested in watching some TV shows that have lots of these phrasal verbs, please have a look at my Mindhunter lessons, because I have 5 videos about Mindhunter, and I have an ebook which you can buy which has lots of exercises for these phrasal verbs. Okay, so these are the last 5 chapters of the book, and I don't know a better book than this one for learning phrasal verbs. There are actually, unfortunately, there are very few good books around for practicing phrasal verbs, and I think that's why I'd like to make some exercises, because there is a gap in the market there. I think even the dictionaries, they don't do a fantastic job of listing all of the phrasal verbs. Quite often you'll find that some phrasal verbs just aren't there, even though they're very well known and they're very often used. And please remember as well that every year you hear new phrasal verbs. I certainly do among my friends, and some of these phrasal verbs remain, but some of these phrasal verbs you hear one year and you never hear again. Now, all of these are good ones because they've been used for many, many years. So the first one's easy. Come in and go out would be the opposite of come in. There's a nice easy one for you to start with. None of the others are going to be as easy as that, unfortunately. But if you come in a room, you enter, and if you go out of a room, you exit. Simple as that. However, if you come at someone, and you can see that chapter 56 was phrasal verbs with come, and I have another video about phrasal verbs with come, so you can try that lesson as well if you want some more. But if you come at someone, then you attack them in some kind of way. Usually it means physically attack, not metaphorically attack. So if you come at someone, you could come at someone with a knife, you could come at someone with a weapon, and it means that you are attacking them. And 2 other phrasal verbs which mean exactly the same thing are run at someone and go for someone. If you say the burglar went for me, it means he attacked you in some kind of way, maybe with a stick or a weapon, or maybe with his fists. He can go for you with his fists as well. It doesn't have to be a weapon, it could be his hands. Go for can actually be used metaphorically. Come at and run at are usually physical, but you could say the critics went for her after her speech, and that would mean that the critics attacked her, but in a metaphorical sense, not in a physical sense. Now, if you come at a problem, it means you approach the problem from a certain angle, from a certain perspective. So I think in mathematics, I do a lot of maths with my daughter at the moment because she's got a test coming up, and I tell her that always try and think of at least 2 ways to come at the problem. And I mean, think of at least 2 directions from which you can approach the problem, because we all know that mathematics is something that can be done in hundreds of different ways and still you get to the same answer. And I think that it's important to find more than one way to come at a problem, because then you can check that your answer is correct. So yeah, there's a little bit of advice for everyone. Always find a few different ways to come at a problem. Okay, if something comes down to you through the generations, or if an object is passed down the members of your family, passed down from your great-grandfather to your grandfather to your dad, that means that this is a family heirloom. This is an object which belongs to the family, which the generations constantly pass down so that the next generation can inherit that heirloom. They can come into they can inherit their fortune. They can come into their fortune, if it is a fortune, and it means that the older generations can pass down. They can pass on, would be something similar. They can pass down whatever object or riches it is that they'd like to keep in the family. But yeah, pass on would be quite similar to pass down, but pass on is normally pass on this message or pass on something physical, meaning transmit. Yeah, you can very often see it with pass on a message for me. But yeah, pass down for items which are inherited. And if you come into a lot of money, that means you inherit a lot of money. And it's normally used with money, this one. Come into a lot of money or come into a fortune. It's not normally used with individual objects, like when something is passed down. You normally just say he came into a great deal of money when someone in his family died, perhaps a great uncle or great aunt. Okay, come into has a second meaning, and it means play a part, have an influence, have something to do with. So if I say, maybe your football team are playing tomorrow, and you might say, oh, somebody might say, good luck, I hope your team wins, and you might say, luck won't come into it, meaning luck will have nothing to do with it. Our team is so skillful that it will be skill that wins a match. Luck won't come into it. And so quite often we say this, such and such won't come into it, and it means it will have nothing to do with it. It will play no part in it. So somebody, let me give you one more example. Somebody might say, the only reason that you're successful with the opposite sex is because you have a lot of money. And you might say, hey, my money doesn't come into it. It means my money has got nothing to do with it. It plays no part in it. Okay, I hope that's clear. That's another way of using come into. Come in for is very often used with criticism. You often say the minister came in for criticism when he decided to increase taxes. Yeah, and it means he got a lot of criticism. He could expect a lot of criticism. So this one's really quite common, and I think you should remember it with be in for and let oneself in for. If I say this, you will be in for some bad marks if you don't start working hard, it means you can expect some bad marks. But I could even say you will come in for some bad marks. It's quite rare, that one. It's not very common, but it's like expect, anticipate, very similar to be in for and let oneself in for. When you say you don't know what you've let yourself in for, meaning you don't know what an awful or difficult situation you have put yourself into. Okay, next one, to come up against, to come across, meaning to stumble on, to happen on. It's not quite the same as bump into, but I put it there to remind you that you bump into people, but you come across objects. You come by an old gold watch. You stumble on somebody's passport. You happen on a gold ring in the street. So these ones are all objects, but bump into for people, please. If you accidentally meet someone on the street, then you bump into them, or you run into them. But stumble on, happen upon, come across, come by, they all mean find an object accidentally. But remember that come across does have a second meaning with come across as. If you come across as someone, that means you seem to be a certain type of person. This is very common. You can say, I went to, or I saw my favourite singer live in concert, and unfortunately he came across as rather arrogant. Maybe he made a few jokes and you thought that they were quite arrogant, the jokes that he made. So you can say that somebody comes across as, and then use a personality adjective, usually. So it can be used in all sorts of different situations. You can say, I really liked that student. He came across as a very modest guy, but very intelligent guy. You're always using personality. So this one for personality, this one went for when you find objects accidentally, and bump into or run into when you meet people accidentally. Now, you can come up against difficulties, problems. It's got to collocate with something difficult, and that's why I've put face difficulties, because to come up against difficulties means to face difficulties. And you can also say to run up against difficulties, to go up against something difficult to sort out. So very good one there, but it's got to collocate with something hard, something difficult, something that is a struggle. So you might say we came up against several obstacles when we tried to walk to the top of the mountain, something like that. But it can be used in business as well. We came up against all sorts of problems when we tried to look for some funding for the project. Yeah, the funding all dried up. Okay, come out with is when you say something surprising or odd, and it's got to be surprising or odd, this one. So you normally come out with a strange remark or something like that. You know, you might say, I was in the meeting yesterday and the boss came out with a very strange idea. And it means he mentioned a very strange idea. Come up with is also possible in that example.